The family of a New Zealand man who died after being tied to a bed for 10 days in a Japanese psychiatric ward is helping to spearhead a campaign calling on Japan to review its practices of restraining such patients. Kelly Savage was hospitalised and strapped to a bed. He died 10 days later of a cardiac arrest, but his family believe that was caused by deep vein thrombosis from being restrained. His mother, Martha, and brother Patrick attended a press conference in Tokyo today where a campaign against the increasing use of physical restraints in Japan was launched, saying they don't want Kelly's death to be in vain. Elizabeth Brown reports.
Kelly Savage was 27 when he died. He had a history of depression and mental health issues. He'd been teaching English in Japan when in April he stopped taking his medication and became unwell. His brother Patrick, who described Kelly as his best friend, took him to Yamato City Hospital where Kelly was restrained on arrival. Patrick was then prevented from visiting, and it wasn't until after Kelly's death that the family was told he'd been restrained nearly continuously for 10 days.
We couldn't stop crying when we heard this news. We thought the restraints were inhumane and unnecessary in Kelly's case, but we had no idea they could have caused Kelly's cardiac arrest. When we looked, however, it turned out that the risk was well known. Almost 1 in 5 psychiatric patients restrained for more than 3 days develops deep vein thrombosis, so 19%.
According to Dr. Toshio Hasegawa, who's leading the alliance to stop the practice, psychiatric patients in Japan are restrained on average for just over 3 months. Patrick Savage says Kelly's case has attracted international attention because he's a foreigner, but hundreds of other families must have been affected.
I'm sure there must be many more families out there that have been through the same horrible experience but didn't or couldn't manage to get anyone to care. God knows it's been hard enough for my family, and many times we've just wondered whether we should just give up. But the thought that if we did, other families would continue having to sacrifice their loved ones to Japan's broken psychiatric system was just too much to bear.
Kelly's mother, Martha Savage, also spoke, remembering her son as a busy, active young boy who went on to love people, sport and everything Japanese. She said when he'd had a manic episode in New Zealand, the approach to his condition had been very different.
Basically, it was like the padded wall kind of room where you didn't have any, there was nothing he could hurt or hurt himself with. But it was only a few hours, and they never put any physical restraints on him, and they never needed to. I never saw anybody there with physical restraints.
Martha Savage says Japan doesn't have patient advocacy groups like New Zealand does to speak out on such issues.
I hope that we can be a catalyst to help the Japanese people make their own groups and rise up against mistreatment.
Patrick Savage says Japan is violating United Nations policies regarding the rights of mentally ill patients on a massive scale, and his brother would have wanted the issue brought to the public's attention.
That's what Kelly would have wanted. He loved Japan. He was, wasn't super open about his mental health illnesses, but sometimes he would post on Facebook, he's battling with depression. I think he would want people to know that he had this treatment, and he would want his death not to be in vain and to help people in Japan not have to suffer the same thing that he suffered.
The hospital where Kelly died is still refusing to release his medical records despite his family's repeated requests. They've enlisted the help of New Zealand Foreign Affairs staff to take the matter up with Japanese authorities in the hope of getting some answers. For Checkpoint, Elizabeth Brown.